Welcome to the Bruce Poinsette Show. This is the world's most dangerous infomercial. I'm your host, Bruce Poinsette, and along with my producer, Ado, we bring you this bi-weekly news, commentary, and interview experience from the Numbers FM studio at the Portland Art Museum. You can catch the full show every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Numbers FM. Catch clips on youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette, plus exclusive bonus content on patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette by becoming a member. Right now, we're live on Twitch, and you can follow the Numbers at twitch.tv/the numbers with a Z FM. So again, that's twitch.tv/the numbers FM. And we begin each show with news stories you might have missed but should be on your radar. So without further ado, the news. Our first story comes from the Portland Mercury. It's by Alex Zielinski. It's called Class Action Lawsuit Accuses Portland of Violating Americans with Disabilities Act by Allowing Tents on Sidewalks. According to Zielinski, the lawsuit demands the city clear all city sidewalks of tents and their residents while the litigation carries out in court. Portland is subject to a Ninth Circuit of Court of Appeals ruling that prohibits cities from removing homeless people from public spaces if they cannot offer alternative shelter space. To meet that legal requirement, the lawsuit demands that the city construct shelter space to accommodate for every person swept. Those represented in the lawsuit include Portlanders who use mobility devices to run errands and get to work, along with caregivers for people with disabilities. The plaintiffs live in neighborhoods across the city. Several plaintiffs describe having to operate wheelchairs and canes in the middle of the street to avoid blocked sidewalks. Others cited feeling threatened by unhoused people who reside in tents and other structures along city sidewalks. The lawsuit does not include nor mention any people with disabilities who themselves live in tents or other outdoor shelters. According to Multnomah County's 2019 in-time count, which acts as a census for unsheltered homeless populations, 62% of people without shelter said they had a disability. Further, Zielinski talks about the person filed the suit, DiLorenzo, and she writes, DiLorenzo has made a name for himself in Oregon by taking the government to court, often on behalf of property owners and moneyed businesses. DiLorenzo successfully fought Portland for misspending water and sewer funds in 2017 and more recently failed to overturn the city's renter relocation ordinance on behalf of irate landlords. DiLorenzo also led the lawsuit against the state for failing to maximize timber harvest, winning the plaintiff's county's $1 billion verdict. He was also attorney behind the 2020 lawsuit, which accused the state of limiting businesses' economic revenue due to COVID-19 restrictions. Outside of the courtroom, DiLorenzo has a personal stake in sweeping homeless camps. DiLorenzo co-owns an apartment in downtown Portland and in 2021 took it upon himself to hire a private security firm to investigate criminal activity taking place at homeless encampments near this property. He used the results of that investigation to lobby City Hall to remove the camp, and within weeks it was swept. So, to boil it all down, this is the latest in a series of measures against houseless people that seems more, at least in my opinion, seems more designed for the sweep than the actual taking care of the people. And I think it's telling that, again, it didn't mention people who are actually living on the streets with disabilities. So we'll see where this goes. As noted in the article, DiLorenzo has been successful in these suits before. And, it remains to be seen. But the priorities do not seem to be for people on the street one way or the other. Our next story comes from OPB. It is by Andrew Selsky. It's titled, U.S. Pledges Money for Mental Health Crisis Teams in Oregon. Selsky writes, federal health officials said that under the program, 85 cents of every dollar spent by states to expand these services and utilized by Medicaid covered individuals will be paid for by the federal government. There are more than 1.4 million Medicaid recipients in Oregon, according to the Oregon Health Authority. That's almost one-third of the state's population of 4.1 million. An example of such a program exists in Eugene, Oregon, where teams of paramedics and behavioral health practitioners take mental health crisis calls out of the hands of uniformed and armed officers. The program there is called Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets, or CAHOOTS. It is part of the local 911 emergency response system through crisis teams are not sent on calls involving violent situations. COOTS teams handled 24,000 calls in the local area in 2019. The support announced Monday will provide additional funding for programs like that and allow the state and partners to expand it, addressing needs in a range of different situations, the federal health department said. So, in better news for especially people dealing with mental health issues, which does often include a lot of people also dealing with houselessness right now, we're seeing some more services and more support for programs that provide responses that are not, again, armed police officers or not uniformed police officers. And I can tell you from personal experience in, dealing with an ongoing situation, I'm definitely supportive of knowing there's someone I can call where the situation is not going to end up with, a body outside and that being on my soul. So hopefully we continue these investments in more mental health services, less police and militarized response to people struggling. Next story comes from the Portland Mercury, also by Alex Zelinsky. It's called "Portland Street Response is Still Banned from Responding to Suicide Calls or Entering Buildings." According to Zelinsky, in April, PSR, Portland Street Response, announced that they'd be meeting with the city's human resources offices along with representatives from the Portland Police Association, PPA, the union representing rank-and-file police, to resolve this problem and present City Council with an update no later than June 30th. PSR and PPA are more than 2 months overdue on that council presentation. As of September, those conversations have not resolved, meaning PSR staff are still blocked from addressing a number of emergencies. And it goes on in the article to talk about how one of the focuses with inside PSR right now is hiring additional staff and trying to expand its work to 24/7 by the end of 22. According to Zelinsky, since kicking off citywide in March, PSR has seen a surge in demand, jumping from just over 100 calls in February to more than 800 in April. PSR teams currently operate from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day of the week, with demand spiking in the middle of the day. The PPA did not respond to a request from the Mercury to comment on the discussions it's had with the city regarding PSR's ability to respond to certain emergencies. In the past, PPA has expressed hesitancy to embrace the work of PSR, often characterizing the program as a threat to police officers' job security. In February, the city and the PPA released a labor agreement which specified that the city can't cut police jobs due to PSR. At the time, PPA President Aaron Schmatz said the reason the union was concerned about PSR responding to certain types of calls, like suicide and ones indoors, was due to safety of the PSR staff. So, noticing a theme in today's news. But, yeah, the police unions general, the PPA, in this instance specifically, is just it's like mad scientist when it comes to obstruction. It's really wild. And you see, again, I told you, apparently I'm not the only one who would like more non-police mental health services based on this spike and continued increase in demand and this incentive to try and make this available 24/7. But as opposed, I think it's actually just incredibly telling that originally the PPA's argument was for the safety of PSR staff, but when it came down to it, it was about cutting police jobs, aka which would cut more police funding, and in the labor agreement, aka, what's on paper, they had a specification that you can't cut police jobs due to PSR, which, again, PPA, police unions in general, just mad scientists of obstruction. And what's happening in the meantime? You're not getting the people who need to be responding to these suicide calls. You're not getting the people when it's a situation where you need someone to come indoors. You can't get mental health specialists. You can't get the people who are trained to do this. You get police officers. You get uniformed officers that are making the situation worse and having the situation possibly end up in death. is gross, frankly. And yet it continues. Our final story comes from Oregon Humanities. It's by an author you may have heard of. His name is Bruce Poinsette. It's titled Just Go Do It, Portraits of Black Muslim Community Leadership in Oregon. So, normally I'd read excerpts, but it's my article. This is the most dangerous infomercial, or the world's most dangerous infomercial, excuse me. I can do my own taglines. And just wanted to bring this up to highlight that season 2 of the Blacktastic Adventure, the other series I host on The Numbers, is officially dropping. It's a little different this year, as opposed to last season we had 25 episodes. It was kind of all over the place. This one's a little more focused. We have 5 episodes total, and it's focused on 3 main areas. One is a location, sort of a travel feature on Eastern Oregon. More about that to come later. One is sort of pulling a discussion from the zeitgeist of Black Oregon and, hashing it out at the round table with special guests. And that would be on the discussion of natives and transplants. So look out for that coming soon. And then this one, we do, the last one is portraits of communities within Black Oregon, because we're not a monolith. And they're very, there's all kinds of different, not niche, but just different communities within our population. So for this one, I chose to focus not just on Black Muslims, specifically Black Muslims in different areas of community leadership. I profiled Nafisa Faye, who's the first Black and Muslim Washington County City Commissioner. So sort of the area of the politics and the politician. I profiled Max Smith, who's a journalist and activist, and I profiled Nikki Brown, who many know as Nikki Brown Clown, and is just a prolific performer, but also is the caretaker of the Emerson Street Community Garden, is a doula, is a foster parent of 3, and possibly just one of the most prolific community workers in the city, bar none. So again, this is on OregonHumanities.org. It's called Just Go Do It, Portraits of Black Muslim Community Leadership in Oregon. And in addition to the article, there are photos for this, again, we're promoting here, for this project. I have to collaborate, longtime collaborator, Intezar Abioto for photography, as well as Open Signal Labs and Ifani Bell for videography to really bring these stories to life. So go to youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette to check out those videos. And that's the news. The Bruce Poinsette Show will be back after this quick commercial break. The Bruce Poinsette Show is made possible by the support of members at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. Patreon is a service that allows you to directly support creators like myself through monthly or annual memberships. Become a member for as little as $3 a month and get access to exclusive bonus clips and live discussions. Check out this clip from the page.
Are you defending the prequels? Where does your defense end, Bruce?
So, you know what? Maybe this might surprise you, but yeah, the whole meal deal. I will defend the prequels, kind of. Again, I also had a disclaimer at the beginning that I would not put money on me if I were betting on this as a viewer. But will I defend the prequels? Yes. If you enjoy this content and believe in the community I'm trying to build, please support by becoming a member at patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette. Welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. This is the B Block, where I like to lighten things up a little bit. And what better way to do that than talk about a show we're both watching right now. Honestly, about a favorite Marvel character of mine, one Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk.
The She-Hulk, one of my favorites as well, actually.
Yeah, so I think as of recording through episode 5, I'm going to go, I think it's 9 episodes, right?
Yes, it's going to be 9 episodes.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, She-Hulk, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. I guess the female version of the Hulk, Jen Walters, who is Bruce Banner's cousin. She becomes a She-Hulk, basically. Like, she gets exposed. It was like, what was it, blood to blood contact with Bruce. In the comics, she's like the target of a mob hit, and
he needs to do like a blood transfusion.
He has to do a blood transfusion, and then she gets the gamma and she becomes a She-Hulk. But yeah, it's the show itself is, it's like, I think it's, while Marvel's always done a lot of comedy, it's definitely like, it's either the first or one of the first like full, just like, it's a full comedy.
I would agree. I think it's full comedy.
Yeah. Like, very full comedy, a little lawyer procedural. So for those of you who, used to watch Harvey Birdman back in the day, it should definitely, it has a lot of those vibes.
Yeah.
Except with, live action Marvel superheroes. And yeah, Ado, I'm curious what do you think of the show so far?
I think, truthfully, the world is being really harsh on She-Hulk. I think it's fun. I think it is cute. I think that honestly, it is so far, it's been one of my favorites out of the shows. It goes up there. I really enjoyed Miss Marvel. I really enjoyed a lot of them. But I just think that like, it's a good way to do a fun Marvel story. And I think it's important because like the character is really chill and like the character is a classic character. And I feel like it's really accurate to a lot of the comics that I've read from her. So like, yeah, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, and I like you brought up sort of like the classic comics, especially I really became a fan of She-Hulk while kind of getting into the John Byrne run from I think it's like the late 80s or early 90s. And the thing that, is very notable about She-Hulk is long before Deadpool, she was the first character to really like just regularly break the fourth wall. And you see that a lot in the series. And I think it's just that humor, that ability to, especially like, part of, you allude to the internet being pretty harsh, and specifically a certain section of the internet, aggrieved men, a lot of white men, but aggrieved men across the board who, because the show it does this wild thing where it's, it's the main character is a woman who in her life deals with misogyny because I'm not sure if you've met us men people out here.
We can be misogynist though.
Yes. So a lot of people, they're like, oh my God, it's the woke show. It's like, I guess, a hit dog hollers, right? But yeah, no, I've been loving it. Like, it's just, like you said, it's fun. You've had up through, you have had a bunch of cameos, which, some people don't like. You've had Bruce Banner, of course, the original Hulk.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of Wong.
So much Wong. Wong is killing it.
The Wong CU. It's wonderful. You had Madison with Madison with 2 N's and 1 Y.
Yeah, but it's not where you think. Yeah.
I think what's been great, with She-Hulk, because people have been saying, oh, is Marvel slipping the ratings, especially like they're saying with Miss Marvel especially, were like low or something. I mean, I loved Miss Marvel.
Same.
I thought it was a great show, but you had a lot of people coming out saying, I'm not even going to watch this because this is not even for me or whatever. Again, dude bros.
Misogynists.
Yeah. But what's been funny with She-Hulk is, people have tried to do the same thing, but She-Hulk's been winning the internet,
dude,
every week.
Yes.
Like the first episode, and I think what's been really awesome about it too is like the first 4, they all have, the Marvel stingers at the end. So by now everyone knows about like the first episode where there's this ongoing conversation during it about, whether or not Captain America is a virgin.
Right.
And, at the end, of course, Jen gets Bruce to reveal that, oh no, he lost his virginity at the USO show in 1940, whatever. And then it's just like, Captain America, fuck!
Right.
It's, for my money, it has to be, is it the best Marvel stinger ever? If not, it's close.
It's close. Because, look, I got to give it. I know we're going to get there. Mm-hmm. But, as we know, was it episode 3?
Which?
The Megan Thee Stallion episode.
Yeah. Admittedly, that's the other. So, again, stingers, we're just going to skip to episode 3 where, is a heavy Megan Thee Stallion, just feature cameo. And then, of course, they go to the stinger and it's She-Hulk and Megan Thee Stallion twerking. And, when you want to talk about the ridiculous of the internet, just, again, the dude bros getting, angry about twerk. Like,
She-Hulk and Megan Thee Stallion twerking.
Like, we can all, Marvel is giving us permission to all just be thirsty people.
Right. You could have
let it happen
on the exact opposite side of this. Like, I feel like they know, like, Marvel fans have been pining for She-Hulk since the conceptualization of the character.
Right.
And you're telling me that one of the most, like, proud sex-forward artists in the modern day and She-Hulk are twerking on a Marvel show and y'all are mad?
Yeah. And She-Hulk, let's be clear in the comics, She-Hulk is very sex positive.
Yes,
She-Hulk,
absolutely.
Like, She-Hulk stands in herself. She is proud and is wonderful. And again, I think the wild part is when people try and get like faux intellectual with it. It's like, well, this isn't true to the comics. Really?
Are you sure?
What She-Hulk comics have you read?
Right.
Like, especially like the comics this is based off of. What? But it's all like, it's all true to the character. It's all there, but people who have clearly, I mean, I'm already giving too much credence to like this idea that people are arguing from a place of logic, because they're not. They're just doing troll.
Yeah,
troll
they're
stuff.
doing troll.
They're
business.
literally copy and pasting arguments from other things. They've not read She-Hulk, or they don't care what the actual She-Hulk comics do. But it's just, yeah. Meanwhile, I mean, I think it was always funny. Like in the trailer, of course, they have She-Hulk on a date and just like literally carrying a guy to the bedroom.
Right.
I remember like myself, because like I don't make memes, but that was like maybe a month or two after the the Drake album. What was it?
Oh, I forgot.
Certified Lover Boy. That's what it was. So I just kind of like redid that, except with all the guys raising their hands in that picture. And I was like, I'm really proud of myself for this. But what was funny is like, again, it's not just guys. It's across the spectrum. People like lift me,
Yes.
Again, like I feel like permissive thirst. And I want to shout out a YouTube creator, Andre, who does Black Nerd Comedy.
Yes, I love him.
Like his She-Hulk, like episode reactions, or not reactions, but like reviews are amazing.
Yes.
And specifically, he tries to do the respectful thirst where like he's talking about substance, and he's like, he has to like depart, but he'll just like run off camera and then just start screaming, "Oh my God." Okay, I'm back.
Yes.
It's just like, I'm like, this is, you know what? There's a space for this.
There is.
And we can all, like, I don't know. It's weird to me to watch people who are just trying to get mad, and like, we're all having fun here.
Yeah.
Everyone we have a courtroom procedural, again, like, we have Harvey Birdman, but in live action with Marvel superheroes.
Right. And it's just fun. I think, too, it's been really interesting because it's like, this to me solidified what I feel like I really found what I enjoy about Phase 4 in this series in full. And like, what I'm finding is really funny about what the world is saying, because a lot of people have been being like, the MCU is done. This is the worst phase. The MCU is terrible now. We don't care. Like, da-da-da-da. And it's really interesting because it's like, it's far from done. They've just found a new way to give us entertainment, and like it's more. I feel like the original appeal of the MCU, like especially like Phase 3, is when it started getting really comic booky, and like we were getting every type of comic book story under the sun. And I think we need to acknowledge comic books are real serialized and TV like, and they kind of don't. Like they don't always end in the most like conclusive way. Like you'll have a whole series that you're watching and it's great, and then the ending's just kind of like, okay. And then that hit me literally days ago. I was like, wait, this is literally just the MCU eating up its comic book era. Yeah. Like we're getting stories about the multiverse on one side. We have Loki on this side. We have Miss Marvel, a teen book. We have She-Hulk, an absolute great comedy. And we have like all these different stories that feel like we're getting fed like a comic book series, like different comic book series. And it's really fun.
I love it. Like, that's such a great point. It's just like you have these different series, these different voices, these different styles, all actually like existing in the same universe in like that point you made about the like being serialized and like TV. So yeah, like each week, you know, or like, yeah, back in my days when I had two, you know, I had boxes at two stores and I was living that dream. You know, you read your page, it's like your 15-minute episode in this, you know, comic, and then it's like to be continued to the next week, and you have, you know, your six issue run, your sometimes more, sometimes less.
Right.
But it's like these shows are very much like that. And it's like, yeah.
And like I think I gotta acknowledge too, it's like I get concerned, specifically with She-Hulk, and I think like we've been alluding to this, but like it's becoming fairly clear that it's like She-Hulk isn't bad. Maybe you're just not used to seeing women on TV. Can we talk about that? And like, let's really, like, Marvel has a lot of projects this year, the past few years, where like a lot of women have been the main characters. Like, I don't know if you know, but Twitter loves Wanda. Twitter is killing for Wanda right now. Miss Marvel was great. I think She-Hulk is great. I think most of the time, like Angelina Jolie killed it in Eternals for me. She was my favorite Eternal. And I'm sitting here like, look, like, are these projects really that bad? Like, did you really hate Black Widow that much? I saw so many reviews of people being like, Black Widow would have been so great if it came out when Civil War came out. And I was like, why don't you just pretend like it did? Yeah. Like, what's the issue? Like, what are we missing?
You can have you have Disney Plus. You can have a Marvel marathon anytime you want, in order, whatever you want to do. Black Widow will be there.
Yes.
And, you know, I wasn't even like, again, Black Widow, you know, it was all right to me. But also, even from that movie, I was like, Florence Pugh can stay forever.
Florence Pugh
and
can
ever.
stay.
Like, part of it is just, you know, maybe it's like the saturation where it's just like there's so much out there. And also we have this like reaction culture where we need to have like a strong stance on everything.
True.
And if it's not breaking through, if it's not breaking new records, then, you know, what's it doing?
Right.
Then you must be losing. But it's like, if Marvel's losing, who's winning? That's what I always come back to.
Amazon, I guess.
Maybe, but like,
they have two shows.
Yeah.
In comparison.
Like, the Boys is great.
Boys is great. Invincible is great, but those can't hold down a whole lot.
So DC is not, like, DC has some great things happening.
DC is on fire right now as well.
But are they winning the battle? Like, no. If you really, like, I faithfully watch Titans, and this B block was always going to come back to Titans.
Always. We love it. We need Titans or Young Justice. You know it.
But am I going to be out here saying, if you're going to tell me She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, Hawkeye, pick a Marvel show and seriously tell me
Titans
that's worse than Titans.
Right. Truthfully, I think when you look at the bigger picture, no, Marvel's not doing that bad at all. The movies are still fun. The shows are really fun. Like, Okay, so everyone, we can watch how many seasons of The Office, how many seasons of New Girl, Community, all these shows that are like, and like, mind you, these are very well written shows. Some of them are really fun, but there's also some mundane shows. Like, how many years did How I Met Your Mother last on TV?
The Big Bang.
Big Bang Theory.
And I say this as someone who, I feel like I watched a few seasons of Big Bang Theory and was like, I was in there. And if you ask me today to explain why, I can't really tell you.
So it's like, I look at where we are now, and like, I think if anyone is oversaturated, if anyone is like, this is a lot for me, I'm going to take a break, cool. But I feel like there's probably a sect of people who are watching the MCU, and I feel like there's probably a sect of like Black and brown kids and like women who are looking at the MCU right now, and they're like, this is amazing. I'm having a lot of fun because they're doing a lot of really cool.
Exactly. Like again, we don't need to relitigate Young Justice, but we are not anywhere close to there.
Yeah.
We are having fun, and it emphasize again, She-Hulk has been winning the internet.
Right.
And it's not even in regards to just like comic book shows being out, like She-Hulk and Harley Quinn come out the same day.
Right.
And Harley Quinn is amazing.
Yes.
Like the fact that She-Hulk is winning the internet with this other comic book property that is doing so many great things in its own right.
Means something.
Yeah.
People really like Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn does not have a small audience.
But yeah, with that, just say a parting word is She-Hulk is fun.
She-Hulk is fun.
Just have like if seeing women on TV, it bothers you, there's like, we don't have as many mental health resources as we need.
Right.
But I promise you, therapy.
That'll help.
Therapy will help.
And please just don't rain on people's parade, man. Like, if you don't like something, that's fine. If you're a critic, great, do your job. But like, if you're just being a rude person on the internet, yelling at people for liking something, how about you just go do that somewhere else? Because people are having fun. And the Megan Thee Stallion scene was a great time. Thank you, Meg, and thank you, She-Hulk team.
Yes, thank you, She-Hulk, and again, lift me.
Please me.
The Bruce Poinsette Show will be back after this quick ad break. BrucePoinsette.com is your one-stop shop for everything Bruce Poinsette. You have my services such as freelance writing and editing, creative nonfiction courses, as well as customized writing classes, event facilitation, and digital content creation. Again, go to BrucePoinsette.com for a quote and make sure to sign up for my newsletter so you don't miss any news or updates. So welcome back to the Bruce Poinsette Show. If you've been following us for a while now, one of the things we've been regularly trying to follow up on are the charter reform provisions that are going to be on the ballot this November. And we're lucky to have a couple special guests with us today to help break it down for us. So we have Salome Chimuku and Becca Uherbalau. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so you both are, I should clarify, you both are coming here as private citizens who happen to be on the Charter Commission because these things are important. But, like I said, you're here to help kind of, explain what are people going to be voting on in this November. But first, can you just talk about how you each got involved with the Charter Commission?
Yeah, I can start. So to get on the Portland Charter Commission, there's an open application process. Anyone who is a resident of the city of Portland can apply. At the time that I knew the process was opening up, I was the co-founder of the Black Resilience Fund, now housed within Brown Hope. And during the summer, we had a bunch of the protests, and during one of the city hall meetings, I had testified in an effort to defund the police. And my whole thought process was, give my 2 cents, voice my opinion. But if what I didn't want to see happen, which was it get voted down, I would then join the charter commission and take matters into my own hands. And so that's how I got involved in the process and filed my application.
We love an ultimatum. Yes.
Yeah, and for me, you know, I've been in Portland since the early or mid 90s. I moved here when I was 19 and have worked in and out of public service. I worked for the city of Portland, worked for Multnomah County, worked for Metro, and worked in community-based organizations, and saw this as an opportunity to really be intimately involved in ensuring we're moving our city forward. I also am raising my kids in the city now, and just ensuring and having the opportunity. One of the greatest honors that I've had on the commission for the past year and a half is we spent thousands of hours in conversation with Portlanders, right? And which is, you know, something that we don't do often enough, right? Being in community and conversation with each other about what we want our city to look like and to feel like, and how we want to engage in it. So that has been an amazing opportunity, I think, for all 20 of us who served on the commission.
Yeah, could you actually talk a little bit more about the process as far as like how often are you all meeting? You know, what when you're getting feedback from people, what does that look like?
So when the commission first started, the process was very grueling, to be honest. We had our twice a month meetings for a while. And then once we formed subcommissions, those subcommittees met at least once a month. So there was definitely like weeks where we had 3 different meetings. And because everyone wants to be a part of all of the things, because we all care about everything, there was definitely moments in which we would basically see each other 4 times a week in these subcommittee meetings and larger full commission meetings. And as we got into a flow and started honing in on specifics, that's when we had our full commission meeting turn into once a month, and our subcommittee meetings were at least once a month, if not twice, for most of the subcommissions.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that is that we were also individually in conversation with, you know, all of us have connections in the community. So we're out talking to our neighbors, we're out kind of giving formal presentations or feedback sessions with community-based organizations. So, you know, it's not a lie to say that each of us has spent about 1,000 hours of unpaid labor for almost 2 years. And actually one of the critiques I think that folks have had about this process is that it has not been, and it's a myth, right, that it has not been well-informed and thoughtful. And we've spent almost 2 years building this process with thousands of Portlanders. We've had over 5,000 folks engage in the process, right? Either in direct community conversation or in taking a survey or coming to testify. So the proposal that's going to be on the ballot is directly informed from Portlanders and their experience living in the city.
And when we had proposals up for discussion, we had to then have listening sessions. These listening sessions were co-hosted by different community-based organizations in Portland, and they were looking at getting really focused feedback on some of the things that we were considering, and also even some of the values of the things that we were considering. And then once it moved from those focus groups, that we had to have unlimited public testimony meetings, some of which were really short because not a lot of people signed up, and some others that were hours and hours long because they were unlimited. And so we had to have about, I think, 4 of those sessions in total. And it was a process, and we had them throughout different parts of the city to make sure that we were accessible as possible, as well as providing virtual testimony as an option as well, to make sure we are reaching as many Portlanders as we can through our translations, through our ASL, through our interpreters, and through us moving throughout the city.
Yeah, that doesn't sound thorough at all. But yeah, so we have 3, major provisions on the ballot coming this November. Let's just get into the knit and grit of what they're going to mean for Portland. So one is ranked choice voting. One is expanding the city council to 12 members, and there's also details in there about like the districts in which they come from. And then the last is adopting a city administrator form of government. So we just take those one by one. First, could you all explain what ranked choice voting is and why it would be a good reform for Portland?
Yeah, you bet. But I might want to take a step back and talk. Salome referenced the fact that we established these set of guiding principles and outcomes that we wanted, regardless of what the policy was going to look like, that we wanted to achieve. And what we heard from Portlanders is that they want more accountability, more efficiency and effectiveness, and accessibility of city services. They also wanted more representation and more voice, and more opportunity to influence the decisions that were impacting their lives. So those principles are what we built this policy around. And that's what this measure is all about: ensuring increased accountability, accessibility, representation, and effectiveness. One of the components, ranked choice voting, gives voters more voice and more choice in the process. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. You get your ballot, and rather than right now, you just get to vote for one person, right? And sometimes, honestly, it's like choosing between the lesser of two evils, right? Or you have to make a strategic choice with your vote. You don't want to throw it away because you know this person is going to win. So, Portlanders have often been faced to kind of make a decision, hold their nose and make a decision about voting for their elected leaders. Ranked choice voting allows you to rank candidates in order of your preference. And essentially that's just mean that, Salome is my number one. Bruce, I like you too, so I'm going to rank you number two, right? And what that results in, this is a voting method that happens all across the country. It happens in Benton County in Oregon. And in fact, Alaska just used ranked choice voting to elect their first and ever Indigenous member of Congress, who beat out Sarah Palin. So that's the voting method that is, again, being used in jurisdictions around the country. As a voter, your ballot will look a little different, but it'll be pretty straightforward. Again, you'll just have candidates on the ballot, and you get to rank most likely up to 5 of them in order of preference. You don't have to rank them. You can just vote for one if you choose. Or you can say, there are 3 people I like, and I'm going to rank them in order. And then there's kind of a mathematical tallying that happens once ballots are cast, and then a clear winner is chosen. And what we've seen in the research is that 2 things happen. One is folks like the outcome better. Ranked choice voting has led to more people of color and more women getting elected in local jurisdictions. And voters like the experience better, like it actually feels better for them to fill out their ballot. They feel like they're actually given a choice, a legitimate, meaningful choice to have their voice heard on the ballot.
Okay, yeah. And so let's talk about expanding the city council. So currently it is 6 members, 7 members.
City council is currently comprised of 5 members, 1 mayor, and 4 city councilors.
Okay, so 12 is a significant expansion. Why? How'd you come to 12?
So, what we heard throughout all of our meetings, through many hours of public testimony, was people wanting there to be more representation on city council. Portland is a fairly large city, so the idea that we have 5 council members is quite honestly kind of ludicrous, considering that they are now one person that represents hundreds of thousands of people and perspectives. And the fact they're all voted at large means that we end up with the system that we currently have, which favors wealthier candidates, and oftentimes candidates coming from the West Side or who live on the West Side. And so with expanding the amount of seats on city council, we also heard overwhelmingly people wanting there to be district representation. And so when we came to district representation and expanding city council, we looked at all of the different portions of what we wanted to propose and tried to finesse them in a way that made them all stronger when put together. And so once we had established or started to feel like ranked choice voting was where we were going, we went more to the math around, well, what leads to more equitable outcomes for our community, because the city of Portland doesn't have any geographical space where it's a majority people of color or even Black residents for that matter. So how do we make sure that these community members who are on the margins still have a voice that matters in a ranked choice voting system? And so we talked about districts, and we talked about multi-member districts, which is having more than one candidate per district. And so we settled on having 3 members per district. And so with 3 members per district, we saw that an increase in first time political folks being elected. We saw an increase in women being elected, people of color, just across the board, an increase for our what I would consider equity priority community members having a chance to be elected. And so with 3 members per district, we then said, well, what's a good sweet spot number? A number that expands city council from what it is now, but doesn't cause a giant explosion of like 47 that we see in some other cities that have a similar city size. And so we decide like, well, if we break the city into 4 districts, that'll give us 12 council members. And through a lot of public testimony, we recognized that 15 was the highest that people were willing to go with, but nothing less than 3 members per district. And so we landed with 12 being 3 members for and having 4 districts.
I would just add, Salome mentioned this, but just to provide some facts, since 1995, 75% of the people elected to city council have been white men. And as you mentioned, from the West Side, almost exclusively from the West Side or Inner East, there have been 2 members of the city council who have lived east of 82nd. And so moving to districts guarantees geographic representation for every part of the city, and having multiple winners, multiple folks in those districts guarantees that you will have representation regardless of like who you are, where you live, what your priorities are. You will find representation on the city council. You'll have multiple paths to entry, right? Like multiple folks, to build relationships with, to help you navigate and access city services, help pay a water bill, or help figure out how to get a permit, and multiple folks that you can connect with on a policy agenda. And we've seen that happen in jurisdictions across the country and across the world, because this combination of multi-winner districts and ranked choice voting, it's called proportional representation, which is the leading system of government in the democratic world.
Right. And that kind of brings us to the last one, which is adopting a city administrator, kind of a form of government. So what does that mean?
So right now, we have what's called a commission form of government, which means the mayor and the 4 city councilors, not only do they make policy, they vote on things, but they also are responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city. Each one of them is in charge of a bunch of bureaus. That's led to all kinds of problems, right? The work is in silos, it's inefficient, there's a lot of duplication of services, there's a lot of infighting. So we want to move away from the commission form of government to a city administrator form. What that means is that the mayor will be responsible ultimately to the voters for the day-to-day operations and service delivery of the city. And they will hire a city administrator to be the person who oversees all the bureaus. That city administrator has to be confirmed by the city councilor, the full city council, because we didn't want, the mayor to kind of like set up their own. We wanted to balance power and have a series of checks and balances. So a city administrator model means that services will be delivered more efficiently. We'll be able to see more cooperation and collaboration among bureaus. I mean, right now, like you could go to different bureaus, ask the same question and get different answers, right? And in fact, sometimes they're in conflict, which leads to either, inefficiency at best and kind of like paralyzed, in terms of service delivery on one end. So, I think the city administrator model, which we heard through public testimony repeatedly, that folks wanted someone whose job it was, this is what they do for a living, and to be kind of at making sure that everything was happening in a way that made sense and made it accessible for Portlanders.
And when we talked to a lot of members of the public, there were folks who wanted like a more classic city manager type structure. But one of the things that they overwhelmingly said that they valued was the idea of transparency and being able to hold their electeds accountable. And that's why we have the city administrator working under the mayor, is so that there is direct accountability for the voters in terms of outcomes that they would like to see.
Mm-hmm. So kind of what these changes right here is, one, just more representation, more efficacy. And so it's just like modernizing the form of government. So one would think, these seem like things people would want, but there's been a fair amount of opposition to these proposals. I think there's a lawsuit that was recently dismissed actually to have them off the ballot. But can you just talk about, what has the opposition been like? Both, we've seen some things in the news, but then also, where's that coming from?
I think in all instances where you have groundbreaking change to promote groundbreaking outcomes, you're going to have opposition from those who benefit from this current structure. And I think that we as individuals oftentimes hold on to or remember the people who spoke negatively before we remember all the positive. And as we move through as the commission, one of the things that I remind myself of is that the opposition is not as big as it looks. It's big in the sense that it has a lot of money. And what we are proposing makes their dollar value amount more equitable to an individual vote. And that's what they don't care for. They don't care for the idea that people will be voting for folks within their geographical district. They don't care for the fact that you'll have multi-member voting capabilities that will result in more people of color and women getting into office. They don't care for there to be this much change, essentially. And one of the things that I definitely believe is that when talking to your average Portlander, many people feel like the city does not work for them at the current state. Many people feel like the current city structure doesn't work for them or work for the city in itself. And so with this opposition, I think that we're having some very powerful people with deep pockets upset with the changes that we're trying to propose and trying to convince the city that this current status quo is actually working for them when it is not.
I just want to emphasize speak a little bit more about change, right? Like even the opposition saying, oh, we should change, but they're really only interested in small changes, right? Or in incremental change, where we heard overwhelmingly that Portlanders aren't just ready for big and bold change, but they're demanding it. Like what we referred to the ballot was in direct response from what we were hearing everywhere we went from Portlanders. They were demanding big and bold change to the systems in terms of service delivery and accessible services, and also who represent them, right? And so this is in response to what we heard from them. And, sometimes change makes people nervous.
And I would point that our commission on the charter reform has come from very diverse groups. It has come from individuals who have moved throughout different parts of the city, have worked through different parts of the city, some individuals who have activism in their background, other individuals who have provided social services. And so I think that it is completely false to say that we didn't talk to a lot of people, because even outside of the process that was the Charter Reform Commission to do outreach and hear unlimited testimony, we as ourselves as individuals have our own lived experience that ties back to different communities that we belong to as well, that we heard from a whole lot more people than we think people really give us credit for.
I think the campaign also, the folks who are running the campaign are having that same experience, right? A broad section of Portland broad and diverse section, all sections of Portland coming together to lend their voice behind this. I mean, if you look at the organizations who've endorsed the campaign already, it's, the ACLU, the City Club, the Portland League of Women Voters, it's Urban League, it's Building Power for Communities of Color, right? It's folks who have all different kinds of lived experience coming together because they recognize that things have to change, and this is the change that's going to move us forward.
Right. And is there anything else people should know going into the vote in November?
I mean, if they want to find more out about how to get engaged in the campaign, go to Portland United for Change. So you can learn more about the policies and how you'll be personally impacted, and then how to get engaged and help and make sure it happens in November.
I'd also say that Portland should really look into who are the proponents, who are the opposition, and really take a dive into the why, asking those questions, asking how is this going to impact me, but also like, why is this group opposing, or why is this group supporting, and really looking into their values of what they want to see for the city.
Awesome. Yeah, Becca, Salome, thank you again for taking the time to break down the Charter Commission proposals with us. And everyone, November, votes coming.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
And this has been the Bruce Poinsette Show. Make sure to catch us every second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Numbers FM, as well as on youtube.com/Bruce Poinsette. And for exclusive clips, go to patreon.com/Bruce Poinsette and become a member. In the meantime, hey Black people. Trust me, it won't hurt. See you next week.